All right, guys, I got a special treat for you guys here today. Anthony Vetrano's in the house, Hoboken, New Jersey, one of the best real estate agents in the state of New Jersey. Anthony, tell us who you are, where you're from, how'd you get into real estate and what you were doing before real estate.
Yeah, well, thanks for the invite, Joe. I'm really excited to be on the show. My name is Anthony Vetrano. I'm a retired lieutenant from the New Jersey Transit Police Department. I served for about 14 and a half years with the agency before I retired and pursued real estate full time. I currently work in Hudson County, primarily in Jersey City and Hoboken, where my office is. And thank you for the warm introduction. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, we go way back when I was just like starting with all my curls on top of my head. You literally remember you told me you was like, yo, you need to shave that off right now. And then
I
the
did. I
next day I
did.
came to the office and that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, let me ask you, you were 14 years as a lieutenant. Did that job translate at all to real estate sales?
Yeah. I think in many ways it did. I learned a lot of really valuable people skills in that job. I was afforded some incredible training opportunities with my previous department. And, I think even more so on a human level, just learning how to ask people questions, how to listen to their responses, how to be empathetic, and also how to, serve people. And I think that's a major component of what we do as, listing agents or buyer's agents in this business is you're serving a client and a customer. And that was something that I really learned at a very young age as a young police officer.
Yeah, yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess I'm curious to know, transitioning from being, a lieutenant in the police force to real estate sales and being an entrepreneur, what did those first 6 months to like a year look like from going from a guaranteed pay to, hey, you got to eat what you kill?
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the most important takeaways from that experience. I went from a position where I had a salary, where my check came every Friday. I had paid vacation, and when I left the job for the day, the work was done. Whereas I'm sure in this industry, it's oftentimes hard to separate on time and off time and also, I've seen a lot of agents put in a tremendous amount of effort in this business and not make any money. And I think that that's really one of the challenges of being an entrepreneur and also a challenge of being a new agent with no book of business is you could come in and work a 40, 50-hour work week and not see the result of that labor for months on end. So it was definitely a very stark contrast to the career that I had known previously, no doubt.
Yeah, yeah. And, the uncertainty, the feeling in your stomach, I've been there, you've been there, just like, damn, we're working so hard. But in real estate, everything that you do today manifests 90 to 120 days from now. So it could be the next quarter, maybe the next quarter after that. Um,
Correct.
so why real estate though? Like why did you decide to join this industry?
It's funny, and I've spoken about this in the past, but it was almost like on a whim, more or less. I was having a conversation with my wife, Dominique, at the time, and we were talking about, what would you do if you could start over in life? And I made the joke like, oh, maybe I could be like, Ryan Serhant on $1 Million Listing and, go sell houses. And she kind of remarked like, well, why don't you go get a real estate license? It seems like everyone has them. And, maybe you could help sell our own properties and, broker deals for our family and things like that. And I was very naive to what it was about to become and just how in love with the profession I would fall and also with, the entrepreneurial spirit. It was really right place and right time in my life. And I'm just so happy that I found it because it's been such a rewarding career for me.
You joined on a whim. Did you have any like visions or like manifestations of like what this would transpire to? Like did you know how big your life would change from joining real estate sales?
I could have never fathomed it in my wildest dreams, Joe, to be completely honest with you. And I'm really so fortunate that we had a lot of same mentors in our office too, like Joe Greco, and that was my first broker, and a bunch of other agents that gave me the opportunity to work alongside them. Well, I would in my formative years of, learning how to do business in this industry, and I feel like that was definitely one of the things that helped attribute to my success was just having good mentors and, obviously a very strong work ethic from my previous job as a police officer, where I routinely worked a lot of overtime and a lot of extra shifts and things like that. So, it was a lot of different ingredients in the formula for success for sure. But ultimately, I'm so glad that I was able to kind of put them all together and put them all together in a relatively short amount of time too, by being coachable and by being open to feedback and immersing myself in the Mike Ferry organization, which was something that I became a part of early on in my career, and I feel like it was very helpful for me in looking at what other agents were doing and understanding what skills I needed to learn and what I should be doing with my days and things like that. So it was uh it was definitely a journey, and it hasn't been an extremely long amount of time, but it's incredible what you can learn when you surround yourself with the right people and the right thoughts and actions.
100%. And you talked about mentorship. You talked about Joe Greco. A lot of love to Joe Greco. There's a quick shout out.
Yeah, yeah.
Hoboken office. Those were the days, 2023. All of us grinding.
Pirate ship. Yeah.
Yeah. And you talked about mentorship. You joined Mike Ferry, and I don't know if you remember this, but when I was starting out and I was full time, I was in the industry and I was working, but I was kind of like working without, the chicken without the head. I just didn't know what I was doing. I was just in the office, but I was like not really working. And one day you came in and we talked a little bit about it. You told me, listen, man, just get yourself a coach, get yourself one now, and don't look back. The
Yep.
second time you saw me, maybe a week or two after, you asked me, did you get the coach? And I told you no. Do you remember what you did right then and there or no?
Mm-mm.
You walked away. You're a cold MFer. You walked away. And next week I got a coach. I told you, and you're like, all right, finally, you're ready to rock through.
You were very coachable too, Joe. That's where I think what made you very successful very early on. Like, you took my advice and you took the advice of people who were in the office. And as a young man, with not a lot of work experience in the workforce and things like that, you knew early on, hey, let me see what the people who are producing at a high level are doing. And then when they give me these little nuggets of wisdom, you were smart enough to go and operationalize them. And for the people who aren't familiar with the way you work, I mean, Joe, it was very impressive to see this 20 something year old kid coming in and, he would be on the phones all morning long, you know, and working the scripts that your coaches were giving you and doing it and working on your listing presentation and your packets and things like that. And you did the work, and it was smart because you were smart enough to know that you needed a coach to be able to be great. I mean, I trace a lot of the experience with coaching back to sports, and every great athlete has a coach, and anybody who's seeking to improve on a skill in life needs a coach, because they're the people who can give you the skills in an efficient way to help shorten your learning curve and help you succeed faster. And when you recognize that, whether it's on the golf course or it's in the boardroom, you learn so much more quickly, and you shouldn't be afraid to fail, but you fail less frequently because you have somebody there
That's
who's
guiding you.
really committed to your success. Correct. Yes.
100%. And I appreciate the kind words, but you know what? The reason why it was so easy is because I mean, me coming to the office for 4 or 5 months, I was literally looking at the person I wanted to become. So it was not,
Thank you.
it was very a simple, it was a simple equation. This guy does X, Y, Z to do it. Do you want that? Yes or no? So what does that look like? Coming to the office super early, making sure you're talking to your clients, doing your follow up, lead acquisition, client fulfillment. And as though although you're saying all these nice things about you, about me, we could say the same thing about you. You were an incredible example for everybody in the office. Everybody kind of like looked up to you. What would Anthony do here? What would Vetrano do here? Where's Vetrano right now? Let's ask him this question. So,
Hmm.
it was a really nice experience getting to like kind of be under your wing. I remember you used to, let me shadow you and all these good
Hmm.
things. I guess I'm curious, do you see yourself becoming a mentor or becoming a coach one day?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I necessarily want to become a coach, but I'm certainly open to sharing some of the things that I've learned along the way and paying it forward to young agents who want to, develop their skills and things like that. Because, listen, people share that information with me, and I think that's one of the greatest things about the Mike Ferry organization is it concentrates all of these top performing agents into one setting. And it was funny when I went to my first event, I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, these guys aren't afraid to share trade secrets and how they're doing things and how they're, using certain tools or certain skills to enhance their success. And it's such an abundance mindset. And I really adopted that because, I mean, listen, the person that you pull up today may be the person who in 5 years from now is giving you a pearl of wisdom or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely open to mentoring agents who are willing to do the work like you were, and who see the value in trying to better themselves to then serve their clients better. But as far as being a coach, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe one day,
Maybe
but
when
not
yeah,
in the immediate future.
he said,
Yeah.
never say never. Everybody that's listening, just make sure you're on his radar just in case. But we talked about abundance mindset. That is so true. Every agent that is, where a lot of young agents or agents on the bottom where they want to be, you talk to these guys and they're all abundant. They're all, yeah, this is exactly what I do, how I do it, why I do it. This is what you should do and why you should do it. And then the agents that are like, struggling to grow, those are the agents that like, I don't want to tell you anything.
Mhm.
Scarcity mindset. What do you think the reason why agents have that scarcity mindset or just entrepreneurs in general?
I think a lot of it is fear, right? They fear that if they share those trade secrets with someone, that person may take food off their plate. But I think the real producers, uh, who I've seen, even agents in our market. I mean, there's certain agents that I have known and networked with through the Mike Ferry organization who are in our market in Hoboken and Jersey City, and they've given me such valuable insight and information, and never have looked at it as like, hey, this guy is my competitor. Because I also think that the true, you know, entrepreneurs and the true visionaries in this industry also know that competition is something that helps them become better, right? And not resting on their laurels. And so when they see other agents doing certain things, it forces them to continuously hone their craft, and the,
100%.
the people who are committed to that type of development and that type of mindset, they don't let anything stand in their way. And so they're willing to share their formula with others because they also, I think realize that by helping other agents grow and acquire skills and different dialogues and different ways to handle certain situations, they're making the industry better as a whole. They're
100%.
professionalizing it more.
I agree with that. I agree with that. And I guess I'm curious because we're talking about now abundance, scarcity, mindset is super big. I'm super big on mindset. I know you're super big on mindset. You just recommended me I think one of the best books I've ever read ever. I haven't stopped reading it, by the way. Napoleon Hill, the Science of Personal Achievement. If everybody wants to listen to it, it's a gold mine.
Great book.
What is one mindset principle that you took from the police force or that you took from a little kid or maybe you adopted last week that you just like, wow, that's something that you stick with forever?
It's a great question. I think resiliency. is a mindset skill that I developed in law enforcement. I mean, obviously, as police officers, you see a lot of different things, good and bad, and learning how to compartmentalize certain things and not letting them affect your overall performance at doing your job. Because, as an entrepreneur or as a real estate agent, inevitably you're going to have peaks and valleys. And, the highs are incredibly high, and sometimes the lows are very lonely, and they're low. And so, really understanding that, hey, what I'm putting into my mind is so crucial to my success. And, and Mike Ferry jokes about it all the time, like, don't watch TV. And the reason why he says that is because the news is only really filled with negative stuff. And if you really buy into all of that negative stuff, it starts to affect your actions and your thoughts and all of that, and so it's so important to continuously feed and nurture your mind with positive thoughts and positive books and things that are going to help you, you know, be the best version of yourself that you can, because it's very easy, especially, in this business, it's somewhat lonely too, to get into a negative mindset. And when you're, prospecting on the phone, there's a lot of rejection too. And, you have to understand that that's a part of the job as well. So yeah, I mean, I would say of all of the many hats and skills that a real estate agent or an entrepreneur in general needs to understand, mindset is probably the most crucial component of developing yourself and becoming a better person and business person. And it's a skill, right? It's like a muscle that you need to work on every day, like going to the gym. So
Yeah, well, and the highs are super high in this business. The lows can be super super low and very very lonely. And you catch yourself in these slumps, and then you catch yourself in these negative feedback loops. And you're right, resilience is probably, you know, the reason why I'm here today. Because I went a long way without seeing a check in real estate, me myself.
mhm.
Um, but I guess what can you tell that person that's watching that hasn't built that muscle yet? Like, how can you get out of that slump, of that valley, when the valley of despair that Joe Greco calls it?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to surround yourself with the right people. I know there's a saying like your network becomes your net worth. I think it is really, really important to surround yourself with the right people who are going to support you, not only just in business, but just in general in your life, whether it's your spouse or you know, your family. But having people who are supportive of you and who will rally around you when, it's bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, bases loaded, tie game. You want those fans in the stands that are going to be cheering for you. So it's important to have positive people in your life, no doubt. And then also to continuously, do things to strengthen your mindset. I mean, I think it's really important to read books. I mean, we've spoken about that on several occasions, and what type of podcasts you're listening to and things like that, and how you're feeding your mind, because that is really something that you can work on. And it doesn't require a lot of money or a lot of intellect or anything like that. Anybody can do it. And I think that it's really the difference between ultra high performers and people who, they fizzle out in business or in real estate, for example.
You mentioned family, supporters, but spouse. How big of a role has your spouse played in your success?
It's probably the single most important person to my success, because she is such a rock star, my wife Dominique. And she's a great mother to our two children. And like, listen, I work a lot, right? And this is it's a business that requires time. It's not something that is typically a remote job, at least if you want to be very successful at it, and I go back to a lot of my experience as a police officer, and I'm of the mindset where I like to go to an office and focus and work. And, I could not work at the level and with the ferocity that I do without having her in my corner, making sure that everything is covered, back at home base. So she is incredibly important to the success that I've had. She's also a very high achiever, high performer, and she's got a pretty intense job as well. But she always makes sure that things are taken care of, and I could not do what I do without somebody like her. I think that as a young man like yourself, if I could give you one major takeaway on this podcast, is that is the single most important decision you will ever make in your life is who you choose to marry,
And it sounds like that
because
was
it
the
could
best
make
decision
or break. Oh yeah, for sure.
for
I
you.
would do it 100 times out of 100 for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, we were on the phone last week and he was like, Dominique, she's the GOAT, GOAT.
It's true.
So
It's
listen,
true.
last question for you. And this is the question that I ask every entrepreneur I talk to. You said bottom of the ninth, bases are loaded. This is the World Series, Game 7. The count is 3-2. Your back is against the wall. Who do you want? Who do you want to close the deal? Who do you want to talk to the client? Who do you want when your back's against the wall?
I would pick me 10 times out of 10. I mean, I can't think of too many agents in our marketplace or just in general in this profession who strive for excellence as much as I do. So much so that it may be a fault sometimes. Nothing is ever perfect, and I'm always tinkering and trying to improve and get better. But yeah, no, I think that's probably the person I would call on in that situation is myself. And you have to believe in yourself with blind faith. I think that's one of the major areas where a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of agents don't succeed is they don't believe in themselves and they don't trust hard work. It's very easy to get distracted by everything in a lot of noise in this world. And at the end of the day, when your back's against the wall and the bases are loaded and you need to drive in the winning run, you got to believe that you can achieve it
100%.
because,
Because what do
you
you
know,
want to do? Do you want to give somebody else the bat? Do you want to give somebody else the opportunity when you know deep down that you're the best fit? Because you say it's you and I say it's me, but that's the game of entrepreneurship. How are we going to be
correct.
selling to clients? How are we going to be building businesses when we actually don't believe in ourselves to take the last shot of the game? So it's like what you
Yeah.
said. That's what sales is, selling one belief from yourself to somebody else so they can buy in.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. When I first started coaching with my coach in the Mike Ferry system, Ira Nadich, he asked me a series of questions. And one of the questions he asked me is, who's the best agent in your market? And I gave him a name and he was like, well, what makes that person so great? And I gave him a whole bunch of reasons why that person is a great agent. And he goes, we're going to have to change that. And you have to believe it about yourself before any of your clients will. And that's the journey of self-improvement and self-development and learning and doing all of the things that eventually all come together to give you the skill set and the confidence to go out there and perform at a high level.